Welcome to the InvestFourMore Real Estate Podcast. My name is Mark Ferguson, and I am your host. I'm a house flipper. I flip 10 to 15 houses a year. I own 13 rental properties with a goal to buy 100 by 2023. I'm also a real estate agent. I've been licensed since 2001. I run a team of 9. We sell close to 200 houses a year. So on this show, we like to interview house flippers, landlords, and the best real estate agents in the business. So stay tuned for some great shows. If you want more information on my rentals, on the numbers, how I buy properties, check out InvestFourMore.com. Hey everyone, it's Mark Ferguson with InvestFourMore, and welcome to another episode of the InvestFourMore Real Estate Podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking about my worst house flipping experiences ever. So some of you may have seen it. I wrote an article a couple weeks ago about my 5 worst house flipping experiences. A couple of people said, man, you should do a podcast on this. So I thought, hey, I will do a podcast on it. So just going to talk about these cases. Also, maybe add in a few other stories I have that I didn't talk about. I really wanted to do 10 house flipping disasters, but once I got to writing it, I had so much content on 5 stories, I had to tone down the article a little bit. But we'll get into that. Just to start off with, I'm not trying to scare you. House flipping can be awesome. Rental properties can be awesome. And you have to plan for the worst, though. You know, hope for the best, plan for the worst. And although these experiences were horrible and drove me crazy and were stressful, they also taught me a lot, made me much more successful, and helped my business out. So if you have the right attitude about things that don't always go the right way, they can actually be good things and help you learn, make your business better, do things different in the future. So that's how I try and look at these experiences and make, man, it really sucked when all that happened. But at the same time, I learned so many different things too. So it's actually been a good thing for some of these, which is hard to believe, but yes, it has been. And just a reminder, for those interested in house flipping, I have a house flipping coaching program I put together with a ton of videos, resources. It goes through everything I do, from financing to finding deals to repairing to selling, all of that. And then there's my book, Fix and Flip Your Way to Financial Freedom, as well, that goes through a lot of my flipping, strategies, what I do, how I do what I do. I have 22 flips going right now. So I just bought one today. That's a new record. I think I had 21 flips going for a short period earlier this year. And then I bought another one a couple weeks ago to get me up to 21. Now I'm up to 22. Hopefully we're getting a bunch of them sold, though, here at the end of the year. We'll drop that number back down again, because I would love to be around that 15 range. 22 is a lot to have going at once. All right. So my worst house flipping stories. I'm going to start with one of my favorite contractors ever. This is I hired this contractor to work on a house in Loveland, Colorado for me, and I found him, I believe it was off, was it Thumbtack? Or no, it was Angie's List. I got him off Angie's List. And he bid a job for me in Loveland. Actually did a decent job on the house. The house had some problems that we didn't find out about, like it had a septic and wasn't connected to the sewer. I did not know about that when I bought it, and some other issues that caused me not to make a lot of money on it. But he did a decent job. Of course, took longer than he said he would, but that happens with almost every house. He seemed to have a decent sized crew, 3 or 4 guys working with him, and I had a house in Frederick, Colorado, that needed a ton of work. I had bought this house at the beginning of 2014. It had just been sitting around for months and months because I couldn't figure out what to do with it. It needed complete rehab, new drywall, kitchen, baths, electrical work, plumbing work, windows, doors, and we're going to reconfigure the floor plan. So it was a big remodel. At least at that time, it was a huge remodel for me. I'd never done one quite that extensive. Looking back on it now, I think, man, it wasn't that big of a remodel. I've done lots of those now. But back then, it was definitely a huge rehab for me. I had gotten one bid from a contractor, and he came in what I thought was super high, like $80,000 or $70,000. So I didn't use him. And then I had this contractor bid it for me, and he bid around, was it $55,000 to $60,000, which I thought was reasonable for the amount of work that needed to be done. And so we said, hey, how long will it take you? I think he quoted a few months. I don't know if I believed him, but I said, great, let's get it done. Let's go to work. So he started on the job, started out fairly decent. He'd call me every couple of weeks to come see the progress. I'd show up. He'd have all his crew there, all 4 guys working, and things were moving along. Then we started to run into some snags, some hiccups. I would show up on occasion when he didn't ask me to show up, and literally nobody would be there or one guy would be working. So I knew right away he was calling me to make sure I came when his entire crew was there, but it's pretty obvious his entire crew was not working there the whole time. He had maybe one guy or nobody working on it majority of the time because it was taking them a very long time to get things done. So I questioned him about this, and he, had his excuses and why this wasn't true and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, time moved on, and 3 months, 4 months passed. Things were moving along, but very slowly, not as fast as they should have been. And then I made a massive mistake, and something that hopefully all of you can learn from as well. And that is, we were paying him draws for when the work was done. So we're paying him like 5 different draws. When he got to a certain point, we'd pay him like $11,000. And towards the end of the project, he's getting closer to being done. I paid him his $11,000 draw and turned in the invoice to my bookkeeper, and she did not know I paid it. So she paid him another $11,000, which was basically his entire amount he bid. As soon as we paid him that money, he stopped working. I mean, he just flat out stopped going there, was doing other projects. Things came to a standstill. And I argued with him. We yelled at each other. His excuse was that he was in bad shape. He broke up with his partner. He had no money, so he had to take on other jobs before he could work on this one. And I was very confused at how he had no money since I just paid him so much money. But those were his excuses. And basically the lesson is, don't ever pay anybody for a job until they finish the entire job, whether it's a sub, contractor, whatever it is. Even if they claim they're almost done, even if they claim it's just one more day of work, do not pay them everything until it's all done. Because there's numerous times where we've done that, and as soon as you pay them everything, they stop working. Even if it's just a little bit of work to do, they stop working, they move on. It's like pulling teeth to get them to go back and finish the job. So make sure you don't pay them till everything's done, everything's checked off, and save you a lot of headaches. Anyway, this house, we finally got him to go back and finish it after numerous times of threatening to sue him, after sending in reports with the Better Business Bureau, after leaving about 20 horrible reviews anywhere I could on Angie's List, on Thumbtack, on Yelp, on Home Advisor. And he finally finished the job. It took him something like 10 months, I think, from the time he started to the time he finished. And this house, I actually made money on it somehow, mostly because the market did so well in that time I had it. But I bought it on 4/28/14 and sold it on 2/26/16. So I held it almost 2 years, which is just ridiculous because I had carrying costs. Obviously, I had loan costs. I had to refinance this property a couple times because my flip loans only last a year. And it was just a mess, and it caused me so much stress. But we got it done. And I think I bought this one for $75,000 and ended up selling it for like $225,000, something like that, in that range. I'd have to look it up to see for sure. So it ended up making money after all of that. But if I had gone through all of this and then the market had not increased a bunch, I probably would have broken even, because during that 2 years, the market went up about 20% or more in this area. So that's number one story about my fun with contractors and flipping. That was a stressful time, but I learned a lot about how to handle contractors, how to structure things. And if you pay them too much money before they do much work, you're just asking for trouble. All right, story number 2. So right about the beginning of 2015, well, I guess I'll go back before that. In 2013, I bought out my father. He ran the flipping business. He ran the real estate team. I wanted to take over, do things a little differently. So I ended up buying him out. When I did that, My wife was helping me a little bit with the fix and flips, but we also had toddler twins, so she didn't have a ton of time. I ended up doing almost all the flip work myself. I was finding contractors. I was managing, jobs, figuring out what to repair, what not to repair. I was finding the deals. I was doing almost all of it myself. And I realized I had to change things because of stories like the previous one, where it took 2 years to sell a house. If I would have been on top of things, if I would have hired a contractor sooner in the process and checked up on them better and not made mistakes, that would have never happened. We would have sold the house much faster. So I decided I need to hire a project manager who could help me with everything, manage the contractors, find new contractors, make sure that everyone's getting paid right. And my theory was that would save me a ton of time, save me a ton of money because things would get done better, and I could flip more houses. So I ended up asking one of my contractors if he wanted this job. And the reason I asked this particular contractor was he had done work for me before, done a decent job, although looking back on it, he was fairly slow. But again, that's a trait that I think every contractor has. He also had management experience at a large company in the area. So he was one of their managers, and he actually quit that job, or so he says. I don't know if he actually quit or not, to spend more time with his kids and go back to contracting work. So I thought, great, perfect candidate. He's got contracting experience, he's got flipping experience, he's got management experience. He can do this. So I interviewed him, offered him $40,000 a year, $45,000 a year salary, gave him a very clear job description. He was all on board. He said yes. I was a little surprised he agreed to such a low salary, but he did. So I outlined his job very clearly. He would hire new contractors, hire new subs. He would oversee job sites. He would not do any of the work himself. I didn't want him swinging a hammer doing work. And his job was to get things done fast, hopefully save money along the way by finding better new contractors all the time. Things start out rough, as after I hired him, he said, "Oh, by the way, is it okay if I go to Africa for 3 weeks on a mission trip?" I thought, well, that's not the best way to start things out since you just started working 2 weeks ago. But I'm like, if you get everything done, if you get everything set up, yeah, you can go on your mission trip. Well, he went on his trip, and it was in the fall in Colorado. It can get cold in the fall. Well, he did not set up any of our houses to be winterized, to make sure the heat was on, check any of that. So while he was gone, we realized, oh man, it's getting pretty cold out here. Our houses winterized, there's heat on. Go around checking them, and no, they weren't. The vacant houses did not have the heat on. They were not winterized. So I had to scramble around getting people to winterize them, get the HVAC companies out there to make sure that everything was working. And that was a giant mess. So he comes back, apologizes for that. And it's hard to reach him in Africa, obviously, blah, blah, blah. Works for another month. Then all of a sudden, oh, I've got to go back to Africa for another trip. I'm like, okay. Again, he left. Things went slightly better that time. But while he's gone, things were not getting repaired any faster than they were when I was working on my own. So we'd have talk after talk, had a lot of projects going on. Well, compared to now, I did not have that many projects going on. I had a few rentals and maybe, 7 or 8 flips going, and nothing seemed to be getting done. So we'd have another talk about hiring contractors, why we need to hire more people, get things done faster, because we basically had 1 or 2 crews working where we'd have houses sitting for months and months not being worked on. And he'd always come back at me saying, well, I don't want to hire new contractors because I'm scared I won't be able to give them enough work. And I must have told him 5 different times, I have never been at a point in my career where I didn't have a house sitting, waiting to be worked on, where I had too many contractors or too many subs for the houses I have. I said, your number one job is to find more contractors, find more subs. That's your job. He said, okay, cool, got it. Well, a month goes by. Guess what? Nobody new has been hired. Now his excuse is, well, there's just nobody out there to hire. They aren't available. It's impossible to find contractors. So I think, okay, maybe that's true. Another month goes by. Again, no improvements, nothing's happening. Again, he says, oh, well, I'm just worried about hiring contractors because I don't think we have enough work for them. So as you can imagine, I was getting pretty frustrated at this point because he was not listening to me about anything I told him. Houses were not getting done. Things were not any cheaper. In fact, I think things got more expensive. And I come to find out most of the work on my houses are being done by his son and maybe some of his other friends he's worked with before. He is not hiring anybody new. He's using his own people. And even some of the contractors I had given him to use he did not use. So I had one contractor who I gave him to use on a flip. And I said, hey, this guy wants to bid it. Can you talk to him? And like, sure, we'll get it going. So he's like, yeah, I've been waiting for this contractor to call me back, get me a bid. Just having a problem getting a hold of him. So I'm like, okay. So time goes by. He's like, yep, that contractor won't contact me, won't give me a bid. So I'm going to use this other guy. I'm like, okay, that's weird. So a couple months later, I talked to that same contractor who we'd used for years and years and years. And he says, hey, Mark, I want to talk to you about your project manager. He's like, I bid a job for him. I called him 10 different times. I saw him in Home Depot, and he just never responded to me. He never responded to my bid. He never told me if I was getting the job. He just kept putting me off. And I just want to let you know what was going on, that I didn't, back out of the job. I want to do the job. I just never heard from your guy. So either my contractor, who I'd worked with for 10 plus years, was lying to me, or my project manager was lying to me, and he'd never actually called this contractor back, responded to him, gotten the bid. And the more and more it happened, I realized it was definitely my project manager who was lying, not doing his job, and not the contractor, because we had other problems, like a house I bought in Loveland, which was a really bad house. It needed a lot of work. It was also really cheap. I bought it for $75,000, which was like half price of anything else for sale in the area. And it was his job to get this house fixed. He went through, ended up gutting the whole thing, ended up tearing off the back of a house. It had an addition, and he said it wasn't supported right, so he tore it down. It had a basement, which he decided to fill in with like this concrete fill stuff and move everything upstairs. Well, we got to this point, and all of a sudden he didn't have any contractors to work on it. And he couldn't find anybody to work on it. And basically the house sat there for months with a giant hole in the back of it, because the way they'd taken off the back of the addition is just studs, and they put some plywood up over it. Well, they left a 2-foot gap all the way across the house where the plywood was short, and it snowed in my house. It rained in my house. There's a giant hole in the back of the house with no fence around it or safety precautions. And, I thought this house was being worked on. I hired this guy to check things out, drive by properties. And so I hadn't been out there for a while. So when I did go out there and I thought things were progressing, it was being worked on, I saw it in this condition. And he claims it was the contractor's fault. They're supposed to do all this work. Well, it turns out he had not been to the house for probably 6 weeks either, and had no idea what was going on, and had probably forgotten about it. On top of that, the contractor he hired, who did do some work, had put the stairs in wrong with not enough height per code, so those had to be redone. And in the end, I ended up selling that house before it was fixed up. I think I lost money on that deal, and it had a lot of potential. We could have fixed it up without ripping off the back of the house, probably without filling in the basement. But his decisions, his lack of management skills just pretty much destroyed that house. So we had a number of issues with him that just were undescribable. Either the only explanation was he was lazy and he didn't want to work, because it wasn't a difficult job, it wasn't hard, and he just was not getting anything done. I had another rental property that needed like $2,500 in work that I told him about. Said, hey, this is a really easy job. I just bought it. Make it a priority. Let's get it done right away so we can get it rented. Well, 2 months later, I asked him about it. Nothing had been done. He literally forgot about the property. It took him another 6 months to fix a rental that needed like $10,000 or $15,000 in work. He was just horrible. And I ended up firing him. We got into a serious yelling match in my office. The whole office kind of went dead quiet. And it did not end well. But I learned a lot. I learned about how even when you hire somebody to be, who you think will be great to oversee projects, you still have to work with them a lot to make sure they're doing what you think they're doing. You can't trust people until they've proven they can be trustworthy. So in the end, I ended up hiring Nikki, who was already on my team, to be my project manager. She's been amazing and awesome, and can't say enough good things about her. But yes, just make sure the people you hire do what they say they're doing, and can't be just on your own, letting them do everything. All right. It's only 2 stories, so got quite a bit going. The next one. This happened when I first got started, when I was working with my dad flipping houses. We almost always bought houses from the foreclosure sale where you couldn't get inside of them. You're buying sight unseen. A lot of crazy things going on. So we bought a house. We didn't actually bid on it at the foreclosure sale, but it went to the foreclosure sale. Another investor bid on it. At that time in Colorado, which is like 2003, you could get the owners had a redemption period. So you get a deed of trust from the owners, and redeem it as the owner, which is what we did. We went to the owner and said, hey, do you want to sell your house for $500? We'll give you another $1,500 or something if we buy it and you leave it in good shape. They said, sure, we agree. So we did that, ended up redeeming the property. We are the new owners. And like a couple weeks after we redeemed it, we saw an article in the paper about a house that caught on fire. Or no, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. We saw an article in the paper about a meth house being busted. And that was our house. The genius who owned it went to a gas station, drove off without paying. The cops followed him because they were right in the area. He went into this house, left his front door wide open. The cops walked in and found them cooking meth in the house. So we had a meth lab. Yay. If you are familiar with meth labs, then they can be a nightmare. You might have to tear out all the drywall, the heating system, flooring, depending on how serious it is. You might have to gut the entire house. So we were stressing out. We were worried. We didn't know what to do. He was in jail. He called us from jail asking, hey, do I still get my money? We politely told him no. Cooking meth in the house does not classify as leaving it in good condition. So, as if things could get any worse, a couple weeks ago, or a week or two later, we see an article in the paper about a house burning down. That was our house. It burned down. It didn't burn completely down, but there's a fire in the basement, went through the main floor. They had to cut a hole in the roof. The whole house was destroyed. We had to go interview with the police. The detectives interviewed both me and my dad, seeing if we burned it down because it was a meth house, and we freaked out, and we thought it cost too much money to fix. So their theory was we burned it down to collect the insurance money. So we did our interviews. The guy who interviewed me was literally reading from a sheet of paper his questions. I don't think he was very experienced in his job, so I don't know how serious they really were investigating us. But after we did our interviews, they said they didn't think we were involved. Turns out it was one of the guy's friends who broke into the house, and he was probably looking for meth, pissed off that there wasn't any, lit a mattress on fire in the basement, and it caught the rest of the house on fire, is the theory. So in the end, we had to wait about 6 months for the insurance company to finish their investigation and give us a payout. We rebuilt the house, sold the house, and I think we ended up breaking even after all of that. It probably did actually work out a little better for us that the house burned down and we got insurance money for it. But again, it probably evened out the time it took to do all of that and the stress we went through. I don't know if it was worth it, but that was an interesting one. One we definitely learned from. You really have to be careful with the foreclosure sale. And one thing I learned as well too is how to spot a drug house, because from that, before that time, I don't know if I'd ever even been in a meth house, but some warning signs were a guy had tons of cameras on the front of his house. And every time I see tons of cameras in a house now, I immediately think drug house. And I've been right a few times because they want to make sure the cops aren't coming. If they're selling or dealing, they want to see who's at the door. And the other thing was the smell. When we first went in that house to sign the deal, I noticed it smelled weird. I didn't know what it was at the time, but after being in a few houses again, it's a very chemically smell. It's just musty, weird. You just know something's off when you're in a meth house and they've been cooking meth in it. It's not like a cigarette smoke smell, but it's more chemical. So that was something else that just learned to watch out for those drug houses a little better. All right. And then if you look at the show notes here for this podcast, I'll include the articles in the paper. I included those in my last article too, that talk about the meth house bust and the fire. So you can see my house in the paper. Yay. All right. Still going. Have another one here. Back in 2006, I was not super successful as an agent or investor. You know, I was doing okay, but definitely not as successful as I wanted to be. So I had the idea I would do all the work on a flip myself. I ended up buying a flip, replaced the windows, doors, kitchen, baths, fixtures, painted, did flooring. I did a ton of work on this house. And I probably spent 6 months of my life fixing it up. I bought it for $120,500. And we ended up selling it for $164,900. Basically, I lost money on the house and I lost 6 months of my life working on it. We had some issues. You know, this was right around 2006, so the market decreased a little bit. So that was a problem. And then it took so long to fix it up, that made it worse because as the market was declining, we didn't have it on the market right away. The work I did wasn't that great because I wasn't a professional contractor. We had to have a contractor come in and fix a bunch of the stuff I did. And while I was working on this house, I was doing no other business. I wasn't selling houses as an agent. I wasn't looking for new properties to flip. So basically, my whole career stalled. I made no money, and it was a horrible experience. So I learned a few things. I learned, one, don't ever do the work yourself on a flip. My time is worth so much more than the $30 an hour I was saving or whatever it is. If I would have hired someone, I could have been making that much money by selling one house, as an agent, or buying one more flip would have made way more money than I saved. Stress. It was not worth the stress and working so much and just how long it took me. It drove me crazy. And in the end, it taught me a lot about fixing houses. I learned a lot about windows and doors and kitchens and all that. But I learned I need to be a manager. I need to think of ideas. I need to build my business from the outside, not work on it from the inside. So it was a really good learning experience from that aspect. And even if you're a contractor, I don't know if it's worth it to do your work on your own houses, because you could be making money doing other stuff. You could be making money managing people and hiring more people and not swinging a hammer yourself. So really think about it. If you're thinking you need to save money by doing work on a house yourself, it's probably not going to save you any money in the end. It's probably just going to cost you headaches and problems. All right. So I've got one more story here. This one is about the foreclosure sale again. So this was probably 10 years ago too. My dad and I bought a house at the foreclosure sale. So we could not get inside of it. We drove by the house, looked in the windows. It looked vacant, looked to be in really good shape. It's like, okay, we're going to bid on this house. So we bid on it, ended up getting the house, go into the house, get it rekeyed, walk in, like, wow, this is a really great house. It's in good shape, just a little bit of repairs needed. Open the garage and bam, there's a not brand new, but like 1 or 2 year old BMW sitting in the garage. And we're both like, that's interesting, but it cannot be a good thing. When you buy houses from the foreclosure sale, you don't get to keep whatever's in there. There's laws and rules. Usually if it's more than $300 in the property of garage sale value, you have to do an eviction, make sure you give the previous owners a chance to get their stuff. You can't just keep all that stuff. It's not legal. So we're like, great. Now we've got a BMW where we've got to find the old owners, figure out something to do with it. What's going to happen? So I tracked down the owners in California, went up talking to them, and they say, oh, you guys bought this from the foreclosure sale. We're like, well, we're sorry to tell you this, but we're getting that house back. We sued the bank, and yeah, that's our house. That's not your house. I'm like, no, we bought from the foreclosure sale. We paid off, all the banks. We own it. And they're like, no, we sued the bank. We're getting it back. So we're like, great. So we go check the title work. We had an O&E performed before we bid, which shows you basic title, and nothing showed up on there. Well, the day before the day of the foreclosure sale, those previous owners filed a lawsuit against the bank. And that's why it didn't show up on the title work. With a lawsuit against the bank showing up on title work, we can't sell that house. So what happened was we sat around for basically 6 months waiting for the court to hear this case, because they literally did sue the bank. Some paralegal had convinced them they're going to get the house for free because the bank foreclosed wrong, blah, blah, blah. Well, we're not getting anywhere. The courts were backed up. So we hired our own attorneys to try and speed things up, which did work. They got the case heard like 3 months later. As soon as the judge saw the case, he threw it out and we got our house. However, we had to spend like 10, 15 grand on our attorneys and wait 9 months or whatever it was for this to clear itself up before we could start working on it, before we could sell the house. So in the end, I think we lost a little bit of money on this deal after we paid the attorneys from all the carrying costs, because these silly people were convinced they were going to get the house for free, and they sued the bank. And we even offered them $5 grand to drop their lawsuit and go away and let us have the house, and they would not do it. They were somehow, this paralegal had convinced them they were going to get a house for free. The bank foreclosed wrong, and they were convinced. Well, they didn't. And we got the house, but it was not a good experience, obviously, having to wait that long, go through the attorneys, and just not know what was going to be happen with this house that we had all this money tied up on. All right, so those are my 5 worst stories. Some other honorable mentions that did not make that list. I hired a contractor in the last year and a half who started out for me really well, did some really good stuff. He completely fell apart. You just have to watch people so carefully. Even if they do well in the beginning, you've got to stay on them. But he did some big jobs at a reasonable price, got them done somewhat quickly, was a little slow. Then he just started taking tons of time. He would bid $20,000 for a job. When the job was done, he'd come back and say, oh, you actually owe me $35,000 without telling me, without getting any approvals. And it wasn't like we were adding more work to the job. It was just his guys charged him more than he thought they would. His guys weren't working. His guys were sitting in their truck listening to music, and he was trying to pass that cost on to me. So we had some really good conversations about that. He ended up doing quite a few jobs for me. I'd say half of them he messed up, tried to overcharge me for him, and the other half went okay, but not amazing. So the last job he did, he bid an addition, and his bid was like $56,000 for the whole job, which I thought was cheap. I told him that. I'm like, this better not come in high. I want you to tell me the high number, what it's going to cost for everything. You better be straight with me because this is the last job. If you don't do this right, we're done. He said, nope, $56,000, I'll cover everything. I guarantee it. So what happened was, well, first it took him like 4 months to get part of the job done because he kept saying, excuses for everything. And then he gets to a point where the addition's done, foundation's done, roof is on, but there's no drywall, no kitchen, no baths. And he says, I'm out of money. I can't, I reached my limit. I can't keep going unless you pay me more, up your bid. And I said, no way. I talked about this. We're done. And I ended up hiring someone else to come in there, finish it for him. He was just a horrible businessman. I don't know if he's doing it on purpose, but having his bids come in $20,000 more, or the actual cost come in $20,000 more than his bids, and he just assumed that I would pay that, and that's how it worked. A bid didn't matter for anything, and so we had a lot of discussions on why that was not how I saw the business going. If you bid something and we don't change the bid or the scope of work, then that's what I'm going to pay. So we had some, threatening back and forth about lawsuits and different things with that contractor too. In the end, he finished that job. I never used him again. And I know some other people, some other contractors I've talked to as well, had threatened to sue him too. So who knows? We'll see. I don't really feel like getting involved in a lawsuit, but maybe someone else will, and I won't have to do it. All right. So those are all my stories. I've had some other good ones along the way. I've had some really good experiences too, like the high-end flip where I made $180,000 on it. That was awesome. But just some things that can happen. Again, remember, I flipped over 130 houses. So having 5 bad ones, seems like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not that bad considering I've made money on just about 125 of those flips. So hopefully this helps you out, gives you some things to think about, ways to do business better, can learn from some of my mistakes, and maybe even give you some motivation. I don't know how, but maybe. All right. Thanks for listening. Again, make sure you check out my book on flipping if you're interested in the business or my coaching program. You can always email me, mark@investformore.com, for a discount code on that coaching program if you're interested in it. Thanks a lot, and have a great rest of your week.